This video, we're going to talk about subtracting rational numbers. So our essential questions are, how do you subtract positive and negative decimal values? How do you subtract positive and negative fractions and mixed numbers with the same denominators? How do you subtract positive and negative fractions and mixed numbers with different denominators? And how do we subtract decimal values and fractions when they're combined? So again, we're going to be applying the rules we learned from integers when it comes to subtracting rational numbers, except now we have fractions and decimals to deal with. So when you're subtracting positive and negative decimal values, we can change the problem to addition by adding the opposite like we did with integers. That will usually make our problem much easier to compute. For example, 34.6 minus a negative 8.5, this is simply addition because taking away a negative is like adding a positive. So 34.6 plus 8.5, when we add these values together like we do with decimals, we get 43.1 as our answer. Negative 3.9 minus a negative 10.5. This is like negative 3.9 plus 10.5 if we change this to addition, because remember, taking away a negative is like adding. It's increasing in value. Taking away negatives will increase in value. This is a negative plus a positive, so these values are going to cancel each other out. So basically, it's like taking away 3.9 from 10.5. And when we do that, we get 6.6. So again, changing these problems to addition made them much easier to compute. So how do we subtract fractions and mixed numbers with the same denominators? We're going to do it just like we did with addition. We're going to subtract the values of the numerators. And again, we can change it to addition if we need to, but then we'll simplify the fraction if needed as well. Likewise, with mixed numbers, we're going to make the mixed numbers into fractions, especially when we have different signs, positives and negatives, and then subtract the values of the numerators, change to addition if needed, and then simplify the fraction if we have to. So let's look at some examples here. 5/7 minus 6/7. I don't need to change this one to addition because 5 minus 6 is a fairly simple computation to make, and 5 minus 6 is negative 1. So I have negative 1/7 is my answer there. Negative 4/5 minus a negative 2/5. Again, taking away a negative is like addition. So this is negative 4/5 plus 2/5. And then using my rules of addition for the numerators, negative 4/5 plus 2/5 is negative 2/5. And then lastly, 6/15 minus a negative 7/15. Again, subtracting a negative, taking negatives away is like adding or increasing in value. So this is essentially 6/15 plus 7/15. Now I just use my rules of addition for the numerators, and 6 plus 7 is 13. So I have 13/15, and that is in simplest form. It doesn't need to be simplified. So again, sometimes changing to addition is very helpful when we can. Here are mixed numbers, which get a little bit more complex, especially when positives and negatives are involved. 3 3/5 minus 5 1/5. Again, I'm going to change these to improper fractions. And 3 3/5 as an improper fraction is 18/5. And I'm taking away 5 1/5, which is 26/5. And then I will use my rules of subtraction for the numerators. 18 minus 26. 18 minus 26 is negative 8. So that's negative 8/5, or negative 1 3/5 as a mixed number. Negative 9 5/6 minus 2 1/6. Again, I'm changing these to improper fractions because it's difficult to deal with whole number and fraction parts when there's positives and negatives involved. So we can eliminate that by just changing these to fractions. And 2 1/6 is 13/6. So the numerators here, I have negative 15 minus 13. That's going to that's not negative 15/6, sorry. Negative 9 5/6 minus 2 1/6. I'm going to change these to improper fractions. Negative 9 5/6 is negative 59/6 minus 2 1/6, which is 13/6. And I have negative 59 minus 13. That's going to decrease in value, so it's going to get more negative. Negative 72/6, which is negative 12 in simplest form. And then -6 4/5 minus a -2 4/5. Again, I'm taking away a negative here, so I'm going to change this to addition, because taking away a negative is like adding 2 4/5. So now this is an addition problem, which makes this a little bit easier. Again, I'll change these to improper fractions. This is -34/5 plus 14/5, and -34 plus 14 is -20/5, which is -4 in simplest form. So subtracting mixed numbers and fractions with the same denominator. What about fractions and mixed numbers with different denominators? Again, we're going to add that extra step. Let's rewrite the fractions with common denominators and then subtract them like we would with fractions and mixed numbers that have like denominators. 7/10 minus 3/20. The common denominator of 10 and 20 is 20. So 7/10 is 14/20 minus 3/20, and that's just 11/20, and that is in simplest form. So we're finished with that one. -1/3 minus a -1/5. First thing I'm going to do is change this to addition. So this is -1/3 plus 1/5. And then I need to get a common denominator. And the common denominator of 3 and 5 is 15. So this is -5/15 plus 3/15. And then my numerator is -5 plus 3 is -2. So this is -2/15, and that is in simplest form. And then lastly, 5/9 minus -1/6. Again, I'm taking away a negative. That's like addition. So 5/9 plus 1/6 is what we have. Our least common multiple of 9 and 6 is 18. So 5/9 is 10/18, and 1/6 is 3/18, and 10/18 plus 3/18 is 13/18, and that is in simplest form. Mixed numbers, again, I'm going to get common denominators, change them to improper fractions, and then subtract them like I do with fractions with common denominators. 4 1/7 and 5 3/4. Common denominator is 14, so I have 4 2/14 minus 5 3/14. As improper fractions, these are 58/14 minus 73/14. And then I use my rules of subtraction with the numerators. 58 minus 73 is -15. So it's -15/14 or -1 1/14 as a mixed number. Next one, -6 5/6 minus 3 3/4. Common denominator of 6 and 4 is 12. So this is -6 10/12 minus 3 9/12. And then change these to improper fractions. -82/12 minus 45/12. Rules of subtraction for the numerators. -82 minus 45 is -127/12, which is equivalent to -10 7/12, and that is in simplest form. Last one, -7 4/5 minus a -8 1/3. Again, I'm taking away a negative. I'm going to change this to addition. So I have -7 4/5 plus 8 1/3. Now I get a common denominator. The common denominator of 5 and 3 is 15. So this is -7 12/15 plus 8 5/15. Now I can change them to improper fractions with common denominators. This is -117/15 plus 125/15. And rules of addition for the numerators. -117 plus 125 is a +8, and that's +8/15, and that is in simplest form. Lastly, subtracting decimals and fractions. What if we have a mix again? Again, we're going to change them all to decimals and then do our operations on them. So 2.6 minus 3 1/5. This would be 2.6 minus 3.2. And I'm going to end up negative. So these are going to be canceling each other out here. So 3.2 minus 2.6. Gives me 0.6. That's going to be -0.6. 3/4 minus a negative 0.5. Again, I'm taking away a negative. That's like addition. So I have 3/4 plus 0.5. And if I write these as decimals, 3/4 is 75 hundredths plus 0.50. That gives me 1.25, positive 1.25. And that is subtracting rational numbers.